At the end of the day, it's not, you can claim it. Do the best you can, set them on the
Hey everybody, it's 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As I said, thanks everybody for coming. We're happy to have you. First up, we need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Did we skip the approval of minutes? Okay, no. Okay, good. Okay, consent agenda. Next, we need a motion to adopt the consent agenda, please.
A motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Second.
Either one. Okay, a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. Please raise your hand if you're in favor. Thank you. Okay. Board of Education acknowledgements. I guess I can start by saying congratulations to Stacy and Sunflower for the Blue Ribbon Award. That's super exciting, and I know everybody is really happy for you. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Absolutely. Are there any other acknowledgements?
I'll acknowledge Jeff and Darren and Matt for our 40th football deal that we had last Friday. They brought the trophy up there for the tailgate that we had and provide something so we could get Coach Lee down there to the field. I think he really appreciated it, so I appreciate them guys doing that.
That was cool having you guys there.
Made it a little extra.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, thank you, even though they're not here.
I think there's a lot going on this evening. Okay, building principals, who would like to start?
I'll go first.
Right, super.
I just wanted to share that, pretty excited for our kids on Wednesday. We've got a presenter coming in to talk about fentanyl and the dangers of drug use, and so I think that's going to be pretty powerful for our kids. I talked earlier, we had her come at one of our in-services before school started, and so we were able to get her scheduled to come in and talk to our kids. And she's talking at the high school also that same day. And so just excited about that. I think it'll be a good learning opportunity and worthwhile education for our kids. So.
Thank you.
I was pleased to be able to host Donuts with Mr. Riffle Friday, and who knew you offer people free donuts and they show up. And so we had over 260 families represented there, so it was a great way to get to know some of our parents and have a good time visiting with that. So I'm looking forward to doing another one in the spring, but with great turnout. Parent-teacher conferences are this week, of course, and just kind of brag on our teachers' efforts. They've been in contact with 100% of our parents in some form or fashion to make sure that there's a conference that will take place, preferably in person, but some over the phone or other means when needed. But looking forward to a good week of conferences also. And then I had a successful week, book fair last week, and then just a big thank you to our PTO for helping organize our readathon that we participated with Sunflower. So it's a big success with that as well. We got our kids reading and then today finally we had Happy Bear at Cottonwood, and it was a good successful presentation on personal safety. Good for the kids to hear that, and big appreciation to our Happy Bear, was the local law enforcement sheriff's department. So it was a little warm in there today, but they did a good job with the kids and had a good message. So again, looking forward to a good week of conferences, and it's been a great start to the year for them. Any questions?
Yeah, it's been a great couple of weeks. We have Sunflower House coming next week. Happy Bear was at Cottonwood, and then they will be at Sunflower tomorrow. And just a shout out to the PTO, we did a big recess celebration. I don't know if you saw our videos on Facebook, but they had a big dance party at recess, and it was a lot of fun. And then, of course, the Blue Ribbon announcement. That has been just a whirlwind. The community, the parents have been so supportive of it. PTO is going to help out with a big community celebration, tailgate. Sent you an invitation, or you all have an invitation. There is a typo on it. It is November 19th, not November 9th. So November 19th. We go to Washington, D.C. the first week of November, and then when we come back, we'll have a big celebration during American Education Week with our students. And that's been a lot of fun planning all of that. Shout out to the teachers, to staff, our students. We had KSHB there last Friday. Very complimentary of our schools. He kept going through, and all our students knocked it out of the park on their interviews. So.
I just want to give a shout out to our 8th grade girls volleyball team for winning the Frontier League Championship. That was cool. I asked Dallas when the last time we did that, and he said he thinks he did at least 9 or 10 years. So that was really awesome. We also had a fantastic choir concert last week. That was really, really good. Dr. Allison's doing some amazing things with our choir concert. And so that is exciting to see that grow. I was excited to see that we don't really fit on the stage anymore. That's awesome. That's a cool problem to have. And then our 7th grade boys tomorrow football are playing for the championship as well. So we have a lot going on. We also had cross country last week, and our 7th grade girls got 2nd place and did fantastic. So the kids are really doing an awesome job. The coaches are doing fantastic, and so just want to make sure that we get them acknowledged because they're doing a really good job.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there anything else?
I was just going to highlight that in tonight's consent agenda was the first option logo check card proceeds and the big checks out front, but I want to call that out. It's a little more than $47,000 and funds a lot of extra type programs that benefit a lot of students and staff throughout the year. So we appreciate the support of First Option Bank and anybody that uses their logo debit check card and keeps spending the money. So we get that exchange fee part back to the district.
Wonderful.
We're good.
I would just add, since this is the first regular meeting that we've had since our Teacher of the Year announcement for this year, that Carla Haddock and Tim Starks are elementary and secondary teachers of the year. So I know you all have heard that and so forth, but just publicly, congratulations to them. They do a really good job. And also the high school. Mr. Hines got stuck behind some traffic, so he's actually on his way, so he apologizes that he's a little late. But high school theater had a play this last weekend. Did a really good job. So
I saw some
it was fun.
rave reviews.
It was fun to watch. They always do a good job.
Well, if that's all of the acknowledgements, we'll move on to information and discussion items. We've got Matt with the combined site council meeting.
Yeah, so this is really just a public awareness that this Wednesday, October 16th, we're having a combined site council meeting. It'll be here for the purpose of, we have Mr. Fowl, John Fowl, which is with, works for Greenbush, but he is the state coordinator for teammates. So he will be here. And then Jenna Whitaker is our local coordinator. And so that combined site council will be just to talk teammates and kind of an update and brainstorming session. That they have some questions and and some feedback and so forth. So there is, because board members are on different site councils, there is a possibility that more than four more board members could be here. But obviously, it's to discuss teammates. We won't have anything, any board action to take. So it's more of just a public announcement. And then the same thing for the next one, that the special board meeting that we have will be at Cottonwood next on October the 29th at 7 o'clock. And so we will meet up there at 7. The format will be similar to what it was at Hillsdale. We'll have time for Cottonwood to have everything, Cottonwood presentation, talk about, and then as kids come in, have some breakfast with the kids, walk around, and then tour and so forth. So.
Great, fantastic. Okay, and then next up, an enrollment update from Matt again.
Yeah, so I think you've seen this as part of the board packet, but just want to point out that, so our current numbers, these are our official, unaudited September 20th numbers. And if you look at the kindergarten where it says 111 and then right out to the side it says 103 actual, I want to explain that to you. When we do an upload, we actually have 103 kindergarten students in Cottonwood. That difference in 8 kids, when a student is of kindergarten age but they haven't started kindergarten yet, we have to classify them in our upload as kindergarten. So we have 4 students that are actually part of like a preschool. We have, and then that would be what the other 4 students are part of community speech. And so they come in for speech and so forth. So they may not be in our preschool or our at-risk preschool, but they haven't started school yet. So a lot of times these kids are kids that are younger, and so they want to hold them, just hold them for a year to start. So that's that discrepancy, if you will. So you think of 103 kids for the numbers, but our enrollment is down. Lorelei, can you scroll down just to the bottom there? From last year to this year, it shows a change of 25. So our overall enrollment is down 25. However, the very bottom, it says enrollment minus, and that should be Lake Mary. So our Lake Mary enrollment is in that. Lake Mary actually has 2 additional students. That's flow-through money that we use to help pay for the staff over there. And so if you count those two, the number of students that are in K-12 or pre-K-12 for us is actually 27 fewer. And that's really a result of, if you look the last few years, that 12th grade, last year we graduated 145 students, and this year we have 103, or that 111, how you want to take in. So this is not a new phenomenon for us. We're seeing fewer students at the lower levels, elementary, and then we're graduating upper. This is a trend that is not just a trend in Paola. As I talk to colleagues, unless it is a district that is just growing with a lot of growth, mainly north of here, or on the outskirts of the city, most everyone is dealing with this same enrollment trend, if you will. The other thing you will notice that, and as we look at senior numbers, if you say you look at like 135 juniors to 123 seniors this year, and it goes down some, that's because we have, as a district, made the philosophy is we have kids that are ready to graduate. So some of these are kids that are at our alternative school, and they're like, hey, the incentive, I want to graduate early. I don't want to hold them to say, well, you have to continue so we can count you for enrollment. And so there is that from the aspect of we do have quite a few students that graduate early. Between that junior and senior year, they're ready to get on with life, and so that's an incentive. I don't know if Mr. Hines would want to add anything to that, but that's a trend a philosophical thing that we've changed, and we've seen our graduation numbers improve because of that as well. We're trying to do what's best for our kids.
Yeah, students can earn 34 credits in the 4 years. You only need 28 to graduate, so it's honestly pretty easy with some forethought to plan out a summer schedule where they can get a couple classes done, and then also take an additional online class each semester, maybe their sophomore and then junior year, and hit that target that you're talking about.
Questions?
Next up is the Enterprise Fleet Management presentation by Jim.
Yeah, and tonight we have Ken Olson is here. Ken is a senior account executive for the states of Kansas and Missouri, I believe, with Enterprise Fleet Management. So he's going to go in depth a little bit about some program information through Enterprise. But a lot of the information is out there in board docs and publicly available as well, kind of background information. Hopefully everyone had a good opportunity to look at that. Some of that's what Ken will go over and some is what I will talk about. But just a little preview, because a lot of you haven't been on the board long to know how we used to buy vehicles, because we haven't bought any vehicles for many years. And that's because the state of Kansas bid program went away. So it's evolved over the years. We've bought a lot of different ways, but that was the most efficient and the most cost-effective way to buy vehicles. That's not been an option. We have tried to wait it out until that is going to return. I don't know if any of you have bought a car lately, but it's completely different than what it was 4 or 5 years ago. It's just a little crazy what's happening in the car market. So we've been looking for a solution. A lot of schools are working with Enterprise. They are part of a purchasing cooperative, so we can buy vehicles through them, very similar to a state bid. And so for us, this is time for us to catch up on our fleet vehicle rotation. We have 10 vehicles in the fleet that we use for students and staff transportation. We have a lot more than that with special ed and maintenance vehicles. But those 10 are like the checkout vehicles for travel. And so we like to do one a year. That way we have a vehicle, the oldest it would be 10 years old. Well, again, we haven't bought one in over 4 years. I gotta look at minutes. Actually 2021. So it was the last time we bought 2 Traverses. And typically I would buy 2 at a time, just because it's easier that way. We'll always budget in capital outlay, as you see in my notes there. So this proposal, not to preempt Ken, but to get to the end of the story, we're looking at 6 vehicles to upgrade our vehicles. So again, we've had 4 years that we budgeted in capital outlay for vehicles that we haven't bought. So that's 4 of the 6. And really just price escalation. The numbers I used to put in as placeholders for the budget weren't near high enough now in current prices. So that's almost the equivalent of another vehicle, even though next April when we present the capital outlay, we would have had another vehicle in there. So the 4 we already have budgeted, the one that next year is 5, and then basically what we're trading in is the equivalent of the 6. So that's kind of how I reconcile math. And we can talk more about those details after Ken's presentation. So hopefully I didn't set up or step on your toes, whatever you say.
Thanks so much.
This is Ken. So Ken's going to give you kind of a brief overview, and then we'll see what questions you have.
Well, good evening, and thank you all so much for having me tonight. Also wanted to thank Jimmy and Matt. We spent a lot of time together. I think Jimmy and I have been talking for at least 3 or 4 months now, so really appreciate all the time and effort that he has put into this. Tonight I really just wanted to give you guys a big picture overview of who we are, a few of the core areas, briefly discuss the vehicle and operational sides, and then answer any questions that you have. So I'll try to speak timely. If there's any questions that you have, just let me know. So from a big picture standpoint, we are the same company as Enterprise Mobility. You're probably familiar with our rental car division. On our side, the fleet management side, we essentially leverage that infrastructure. So we have tools, resources, people all throughout the country. We leverage that infrastructure to help entities with what we consider small to medium-sized fleets save money and operate more efficiently and effectively. My role, as Jimmy mentioned, I'm here locally. I cover the whole state of Kansas, about half Missouri, along with the rest of my team. Majority of us are out of the Kansas City office here. So from a role perspective, my position is really getting the partnerships established. So analyzing what you're doing today, figuring out what pieces of the program would be a good fit, and then designing and customizing the vehicle strategy and financial structure with you all. Essentially getting the partnership off the ground. As the partnership goes live, we have local client strategy managers that would take over for me. That person will come out typically about 4 or 5 times per year, and one of the meetings will analyze over the last budget year what we did financially, operationally, what could we have done better. Typically a good time for the team to bring that back to the Board of Education and give you guys kind of an idea of how that enterprise stuff is going. The second, third, fourth meetings are really designed around your budget year to help the team prepare financially and operationally what vehicles need to be ordered within the next, again, the 12 to 24 month span. And really the core piece with all of that from a role perspective, I'm here for a partnership. In the initial analysis that we put together, we forecasted out the next 10 years. And all of the different districts that we partner with will tell you it's extremely relationship based. We're here local and we want to be an extension of the entity and working on your behalf with you. From a flexibility standpoint, every district partners with us a little bit different. Just to name a few local entities that I partner with, Olathe, Shawnee Mission, Bonner Springs, Kansas City, Kansas, Spring Hill, Gardner. With these few entities, these districts, they only leverage our program for what I consider the vehicle side. So purchasing the vehicles, getting them upfitted, if there is any funding of some sort, and then Hayesville, Goddard, Ottawa, they use us for that vehicle side, but they also use our maintenance programs, our fuel. Some use Wichita uses our telematics program. So we do have the Sourcewell Purchasing Cooperative, as Jimmy mentioned, TIPS, TAPS, E&I. So from that perspective, you can piggyback off all the different pieces of our program, and even down to the department, maybe transportation looks a little bit different than maintenance in some areas. So it's extremely customized and extremely flexible around your needs. And as the district changes over the years, it can grow organically and change organically. Same from a strategy perspective, some entities get really aggressive. I always give the example, Goddard School District rotated out the whole fleet day one, where Hayesville, right next to them, did a 5-year implementation. So that's what we've been discussing from a long-term strategic outlook. What does this look like and how do we implement that? So the goal is to start with those 6 initial vehicles and then grow organically over the years. Last piece, really the biggest area of opportunity with many of our districts is getting in and out of the vehicles at the right time, reducing the budget, and doing more with less. So really what our program leverages is the strong buying power that you all get from a government incentive perspective, our resale abilities. We have different ways that you can pay for the vehicles, as we've discussed. We're really looking at the self-fund model. We've got a couple different options. But really our goal is to help you operate at the lowest cost of ownership and analyze when's the right time to get out of that specific vehicle based upon the mileage patterns, the incentives, resale abilities. And that's another reason why my team is coming out on a regular basis to bring that to your table and help you guys make good decisions, get out at the right time. And in most cases, we're able to reduce the average age from 10 to 15 years to, I believe it was closer to 10 for you guys, but a lot of our entities are rotating out of these vehicles within the 60-month span. So any questions on any of those core areas? From a vehicle perspective, as Jimmy mentioned, we've got a couple different ways to acquire the vehicles. We do have all of our used inventory, both from our rental cars and the fleet management vehicles coming off lease. Don't typically recommend that for government entities or districts, but we always have that available if needed. We have the largest dealer network in the country. Last year we bought from 15,000 dealerships. We deliver our vehicles to local dealerships. We buy from them, maintenance providers, rental providers, etc. Majority of our vehicles, and what we're looking at in this example, is factory ordered. So we sit down, we spec these vehicles out exactly as you need them. We order them direct from the manufacturers. With none of these have aftermarket equipment, but if there is aftermarket equipment, we'll handle that process and then get that vehicle delivered to you ready to go. So essentially, any way that you could imagine acquiring a vehicle, we have a solution, and we're able to analyze, does it make sense to buy used, out of stock, factory ordered, and again, bring that to your table so you guys can make good decisions. From a resale perspective, the same team that sells all of our rental fleet also sells our fleet management vehicles. So as these 6 vehicles get delivered, we'll pick up the replacements, sell those units on your behalf, the same way that we sell all of our rental fleet. Typically through our direct channels, we're getting about 10% above the commercial value index or auction value, meaning we sell them well, but we're also handling the logistics, getting in and out at the right time, and then maximizing the resale amounts. Again, from a funding perspective, the team has decided to go with our self-fund model. We do keep this on our books for $1 remaining balance. So if it's a $40,000 vehicle, you pay $39,999. And we keep it on our books for $1 so that we have title to that vehicle, so we're handling the license and titling, registrations, renewals, and then when we sell that vehicle, you get 100% of the equity less that $1. We also have a net lease option, which is a traditional lease, dealership type lease. We don't typically recommend that for our government entities, but we do have it available. And then we have an equity lease model that is essentially a bank finance to a remaining balance. And then when we sell that vehicle, you get the equity. So again, any way that you could really imagine paying for these vehicles, we have a solution. And as the district changes, if there's ever a need to leverage that equity lease model or a more financing model, we have that solution available. And that's where we'll work with Jimmy and the team to help you all do its best every step of the way. Operationally, we have programs for maintenance and fuel. We're discussing the maintenance program. We have a pay-as-you-go maintenance structure that leverages the local entities, dealerships, Firestone, Montpaw, whatever it be. Our ASE certified technicians out of our corporate office are managing that entire process. We pay the bill. Your team gets one monthly consolidated bill. Through that management process, there's typically about a 9% savings opportunity. But then in addition to that, we get that data. So as that team's coming out on a regular basis, we're leveraging your hard maintenance data to help you guys make good decisions of when to get in and out of these vehicles again. We also have a full maintenance program for the new enterprise vehicles where we'll fix your costs in full for the duration of the term based around that specific vehicle, the mileage patterns, the holding recommendation. Again, it's fixed and budgeted based upon that specific vehicle. So again, you can keep it in-house, keep it on your own, pay as you go, or the fixed program for the new vehicles. Lastly, we do have WEX fuel cards. Right now we have district credit cards that we're using. I believe Jimmy just mentioned those. Our fuel cards are certainly optional. We run through WEX. There's no cost to them. There's no monthly cost. 5 cent per gallon discount at Phillips Conoco locations. Again, the benefit of this is we get the data. You guys can see that on the enterprise website. But then as that team's coming out, we know what you're spending on fuel. We know what you're spending on maintenance. We know what you buy and sell them for, and it all starts to come together from a cost of ownership perspective. We also have telematics devices, insurance options, and we're kind of working through all of that with Jimmy, and we'll continue to discuss those when it becomes time. So that, from a big picture standpoint, is really what we offer, again, from a operational side of things with maintenance, fuel, telematics, insurance. That's kind of all a la carte and customized around the specific vehicle and specific need. We did put some analysis together initially, just kind of showing the average age of the fleet, the average annual mileage. There was 10 vehicles that were over 12 years of age, and that's what Jimmy and I have really discussed, is getting in and out of these vehicles a little bit sooner, leveraging our program and some of the efficiencies that we bring. Again, with a lot of our school district, the safety aspect is a big thing, so if we can get newer, more efficient vehicles at even a break even, there's a lot of benefits from safety, recruiting, retention, morale, all those different components that come with that. So a lot packed in there. Tried to speak as quickly as possible. Questions that you all have?
With the dollar one, like we pay everything but $1. Do you sell it at any point, or
Yeah.
so it can be sold out from not technically under us, but
We would have to agree to that.
Yes.
We would work together on that.
Okay,
It'd be
so-
our decision.
You have full control at all times, but that does give you some flexibility. So we'll still set it up with a term based around the mileage pattern and holding recommendation. So if we're recommending a 36-month term, and next year our team comes out and says, hey, the resale market's really strong, government incentives for the new vehicles are going up, we recommend you get out of this vehicle at 12 months. We have a lot of entities over the past few years that have done that. Vice versa, maybe there's a recession or the market crashes or whatever it be, we can extend out longer. So you're not locked into any given term, and being that you have self-funded that vehicle in full, you have so much flexibility to get out at any point and capitalize on that equity at any given time.
we know how many miles we generally go through.
Your average annual mileage, and with all 25-ish vehicles, is 7,800, but you're gonna have specific vehicles that are for transportation that are closer to 20, and then maintenance vehicles that are closer to 3,000 or 4,000, right? And that's where we analyze that, and we start, if we have any of those different programs or you're putting the mileage in, we're starting to analyze that from a trend perspective, and again, to help you make good decisions around that. But we customize the recommendation around that. Again, there's no penalties, no fees, anything of that sort, but it's just kind of a guideline.
And I think, as Ken said, it depends on the vehicle. Our maintenance fleet doesn't go very far, but a lot of these, like Suburbans, they're heavily used for student transportation because you can fit the max capacity. So you can see we have kind of a blend. We've got the two SUVs, we've got Traverses, which we went to a few years ago, which I think are well liked. The Dodge Caravans, they quit making, and so that's being replaced with the Kia Carnival. So we've got kind of a variety. I mean, I think nobody would argue with all Suburbans, but obviously there's a price differential for that additional capacity, so hence the mix. And again, just to point out too, you can see, so our Suburbans are used a lot. I could pull up the mileage, but you know, they're getting miled up. The one is 2011 and the one's 2015, so hence why they're on the list to rotate out. I'll point out too, you'll see on there that 2000 Ford F-150 truck that we're disposing of. That's a maintenance truck, 24 years old. Mechanical issues, we're just looking for a way to get rid of it. So that's a salvage wholesale value, just to dispense with that, and we'll save more in insurance a year by getting rid of that truck, I'm sure. So, other questions you have about the concept or the model or enterprise? All right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
We don't have any open forum this evening, so we will move on to action items. So the first one is to approve the enterprise fleet management lease and maintenance agreements. Jimmy, do you have more for that?
The only thing I was going to mention that I forgot earlier is if we order all these vehicles now, they're going to come in pretty staggered. So Ken has said somewhere between 2 and 6 months. So we'll get them staggered a little bit, you know, for whatever that's worth. And then we, of course, pay and come in and get delivered. So order now. I think Suburbans have a long lead time just because of the demand for those. But somewhere in that 2 to 6 month delivery range. So.
I guess I do have a question on, as it relates to that. Is there, with the strikes on the port and everything, have there been any more delays on the vehicles?
So that issue has been resolved, so that shouldn't impact things too much. That if we were a little worried for a while, especially given the challenges we've had over the years. But you know, I think to that point, the timelines are ever changing. Things are substantially better than they were. But there's going to be challenges into the future, and that's where our team, through the enterprise website, you'll have access to all of that. And then as the changes are made, order received, scheduled for production, delivered to the dealer, ready for pickup, you'll be able to see all of that, and then my team will push that through to you. So we'll give estimates up front, and then we'll update those as we go, and provide that to the team so you guys have that information. And again, I think that with a newer fleet of vehicles, the first couple of years and first couple rounds are the most difficult as we're kind of getting this off the ground and going from a slightly over 5 to 10 year plus age of vehicle to a newer fleet. The time is less important, as if we're replacing a 3 or a 4 year old vehicle and we wait 6 months, it's not as big of a challenge. So as we go, I think it gets better and better, but we'll be very transparent with the timelines up front, and then get that more precise as we go.
Thank you.
I do think this will probably be something that maybe even the special ed co-op will want to utilize potentially, because they have a fleet of vehicles, as Ken said, there's roughly 23, I think, with special ed maintenance. So we're only talking about what I call our 10 fleet vehicles, but they're going to need to rotate some vehicles. In the past, they've bought some of ours and used the state bid. So I think this may be an option that they could potentially look at as well for their vehicles.
So these 6 are just from our
our fleet, not
Correct.
including anybody else.
Correct.
You said we've tried to wait out for that, was it an incentive?
State bid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really what I said was the state bid used to be how we could buy them, but there has not been a state bid awarded for vehicles for several years now. And so short of just bidding out your own vehicles, there's no cooperative way to buy them. If they're through a consortium like the enterprise agreement is, through Sourcewell, I mentioned, TIPS is another one. A lot of different purchasing cooperatives that we've used before. You're probably most familiar with Greenbush Purchasing. We've used some others, like when we did the stadium, that was almost a $700,000 project that was able to be done through a purchasing cooperative. HVAC is another big one. The train uses a different cooperative. Capital outlay this year, it was several $100,000 we've done. So that's what we were waiting to see if that would ever come back, and it never has. And we're to the point where we really can't afford to wait anymore.
Sure.
And the enterprise solution is what a lot of area districts have been using. So picked a lot of their brains, and as Ken mentioned, he and I first started talking about it in the summer, and then things got kind of put aside for the budget time of the year, and now we're back to, but this would be a solution in the absence of that. I've checked the state multiple times, and I just think the way the car market is, and a lot of the car dealers, they just aren't offering the government incentives. So for example, when we last bought those Chevy Traverses, the stickers on them were, I think, like around $35,000 some dollars, and we paid around $26,000. So those incentives are just kind of gone. And so I think car dealers can sell the vehicle to you and the general public and make $10,000 more. So why would they give an incentive?
Right.
Is my assumption why part of it went away. And they are able to get at least a little better deal on the fleet market.
And we do get the government incentives as well. So as those continue to rise, those will all be passed through to you. And if the state bid ever comes back, we can buy off the state bid as well. So we've got all the different options that you could imagine. But you do get the government incentives. And then we've got, it's not a state bid option where you have a specific vehicle. We have every make, every model, and a lot of our entities will move up a model or two so that we're getting more from a resale perspective. So again, just what the data and analytics that we're bringing to your table.
Yeah.
And that is part of the reason why we waited 1 year, because when the state bid came out, we always had Suburbans in our fleet, and it was like Ford Expeditions. Well, sometimes you just get mixed matched and where you can service them and different things.
Right.
So, as Kim mentioned, through Enterprise, we can get the specific vehicle we want, not just what is on the bid that year.
Right. I mean, for me personally, looking at like the number, I want to vomit. But like the difference between the trade allowance and the money that we've taken from the capital outlay that we've pulled aside, I think it's 40 and then a couple of years of 25.
Yeah, right there's the
So why were we at 40 and then why did we go down to 25? Why is there?
the 40,000 was a Suburban year.
Okay.
And so when we were budgeting for Suburbans, if you go back down to the next page, so when we were just budgeting, I would plug in 40,000 for Suburban and 25,000 for a van. And as you can see up above now, those aren't the prices anymore. It's 60,000 for a Suburban and 40,000 for a van. So those were our placeholder numbers. So that's all they were, is just placeholders in capital outlay.
So will we be adjusting that in capital outlay to a lot for this to continue to?
Going forward, definitely
Yeah.
we'll use, now that we have current prices, because there hasn't been anything to base it on. There was no state bid, so short of just window shopping cars, we just used what we always had. So that, the 115,000 is what was already earmarked, so that's, as I mentioned in the very beginning, just the price escalation is almost the equivalent of one extra vehicle. So we had money in there. We had planned on buying 4 vehicles going back to 2020-21 school year, capital outlay fiscal year, but didn't because there was no state bid. So that increase is basically the 5th. Or if you want to look at, we're getting 45,000 trade, which I didn't net those off. So obviously that 25,040 would be after the trade, so you got to factor that in too, which is already in our.
Functionality-wise and financially-wise, could we as a district get away with maybe just minivans for a while as a rotation? Like, not knowing, how they're used.
Right. I would say, just like what I mentioned earlier, the Suburbans are in high demand and let's see, Darren's not back here. Jeff can tell you the teams that use them, and if you, like, we seat 9 people in there, So I don't know, I'm trying to think if, does basketball ever take them or golf does? I
We do
know.
occasionally for tournaments. When you
Yeah.
travel
I
to
know
things like
wrestling
FFA
uses
convention,
them
we
a
need
lot
to
to
storage space.
Right. And some of it depends too. Yeah, you can always take 2 vehicles, but only if you have 2 coaches, 2 sponsors, 2 drivers.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can be an issue as well. So the Suburbans do get used a lot, and part of it, like Jeff said, is the storage, the capacity in the back. Where the vans, there's not a whole lot in there anymore.
Yeah, I personally would like to see us, I know it's a lot less, but stick within that capital outlay budget with the trade-in values. And then budget for that years coming. If that makes sense.
I mean, again, you have the monthly financials with the capital outlay balance. So cash flow wise, not an issue, but again, that's your decision on what you want to purchase. But we can have more discussion about that.
I honestly like the idea of how the program works through enterprise, and it does meet statute as long as the agreement of the vendor to honor the contract prices is there. But I do also feel like it'd be more to a financially stable decision to cut back to the price that we have budgeted.
And the only thing I would say on that is, again, those were placeholders. And if you net that out, like that didn't include the trade value. So you add that back in, once you take that $65,000 out, it left $54,000 is the additional capital outlay budget. So you're only talking a difference of $54,000. And I'm not diminishing $54,000
Are we paying it up front or when the car is delivered?
when it's delivered.
So it could actually go into next year's budget if the Suburbans are later.
Correct. You don't start paying until after the vehicle is delivered. And I know that this is kind of a different topic, but if we do have that equity lease model to where if we wanted to fund a small portion of that vehicle to stay within the limits of the budget, we can certainly accommodate that as well. And I can work with Jimmy to structure that however we need. But you do not start paying until after that vehicle is delivered.
Okay, so Jimmy, what is the additional capital outlay funds? What is that then?
What number are you talking about?
It's under funding, the 118.
So that, I was just trying to show the total. So the total car purchase price of the 6 vehicles, the $115,000 is the 4-year placeholders that we had. So to come up with the total cost, what we need to pay out, it's the additional $118,000. So again, that's just showing cash flow wise. So again, we have the trades up above, which weren't affected either. So if you read down through the narrative of my board report, which I will have to flip back to refresh my memory too.
Want me to flip to something?
It's in there. It's the paragraph below the monthly fees. So you can see we had the $115,000 budgeted. We will budget another vehicle again, what you'll see in April of next year for the 25-26 cap outlay. And so that $25,000 for vans, $40,000 for Suburbans. Again, the price increases accounted for $65,000 of that differential. So leaving what I said, $54,000 is just the net difference. So not to try to confuse that, but that's the total is $233,000 is the cost of the 6 vehicles less the trade. So minus the $115,000 we had already earmarked is $118,000 additional money, if you will, in price escalation and buying the additional vehicles. But again, I guess it depends on how you slice and dice it. But if you look at capital outlay, our balance, $4.3 million. So it's not a cash flow issue. I would never bring a proposal that was going to, that would be something we could not afford or wouldn't have been doing anyway. So hence, as Ken just mentioned, again, the lease option, that's why we're bringing this to you as a cash option. We could lease these vehicles and not have any upfront cash cost, but then we're paying interest costs, which we typically try not to do.
And I will add, from the analysis that we put together was actually slightly more aggressive than the 6 vehicles, but what it accounted for was the maintenance reduction, the fuel reduction, and then after 3, 4, 5 years when we sell these new vehicles, getting that capital back from an equity perspective. So the operating expenses will be reduced just by implementing the newer vehicles. So there's that in the equation as well, and that's what we kind of analyze from a big picture standpoint, but kind of a different topic there.
Yeah, so there's additional savings that is harder to quantify.
What does the rotation look like for the coming years? Like, are we doing 6 now and?
Well, like I mentioned
6
earlier,
next
we have
year?
a fleet of 10, and I
Right.
try to do 1 a year, so they're no more than 10 years old, and I would have already had 1 more in next year, so, we'll continue to do 1 a year.
1 a year, okay.
Yeah, for our fleet.
Right,
And if the co-op does more, again, that's got a co-op fund. Maintenance vehicles would be in addition to what we need. But we have 3 pretty new maintenance trucks, so we have 1 or 2 other that are pretty old. I think we have a 99, I'd have to pull up that. But we do have another maintenance truck that at some point is going to need updated.
Sure.
Now, when we buy a maintenance truck, and they're critically important because of snow removal, which we save more money than we spend on the vehicles by doing our own snow removal. Because back when I first started, we were paying for snow removal, and that's a bill that will shock you how much just the high school parking lot costs. It's thousands of dollars to take 1 snow off of that. So, again, that will be later on. But yes, 1 a year to try to keep that fleet to 10. And we've not expanded our fleet. I mean, there are times like this Saturday, all 10 vehicles are gone. They're all in use. So there are peaks that when we could use more, but we're not proposing to expand the fleet.
I like your proposal, and I know the vehicles, are really well used and all kinds of different sports and clubs. I've driven one time for a field trip, and we packed it full of kids, and I think it's a very good use of the funding.
And a lot of it comes down to safety. I know Ken touched on this a little bit, but if you look in a lot of his proposal information, it is safety. And we want safe transportation for our students and our staff. These have new modern bells and whistles that ours don't. But again, just as the fleet gets older, several years ago, some of you may remember this, we had vehicles breaking down left and right, and we had students stranded on I-35 on the way to school for the blind. Not a good situation that we want to repeat. So, it may be different than what you do in your household, but again, 10 years for a vehicle is, to me, a fairly extended use anyway. 10 years is reasonable in my opinion. There's a lot of districts around that trade their vehicles every year or every couple. So, not proposing that we get into anything sooner than that, unless if Ken does come along and says he can make us money on these vehicles, I will eat my words and come back in a year and say, well, look at this proposal. But
And I think that's exactly what we want to be here for, is we want to bring that to your table when the timing is right. And right now, it doesn't make sense to flip these specific vehicles after 1 year, but it might next year, the following year, and that's where the partnership comes in, and we'll be here to bring that to your table when the timing's right.
Are there other questions or discussion?
And an option would be, if you, the Suburbans and the Dodge Caravans need to be replaced. We're to that point. So an option could be is that you could make a decision to move forward with those 4, and then as we work through that, we could actually, if we needed to, the 2 that are listed as 2017 Traverses, we could work with Ken for that's a delivery date of, say, July for for next budget year, so we can put that, the money we can, as we put into the next budget year, if that helps. It's a little bit of, I won't say it's a shell game, because when you have the cash, you have the cash, but you could, we could move forward with the 4, and then the 2 work on a little bit later delivery, say July, and because we would have had that capital outlay, and it would be built in for next year's capital outlay if you wanted to look at that. So I think you're still, I don't want to speak for Jimmy, but we're still getting that accomplished. But the only difference is you're seeing it as part of a capital outlay list for next year versus it being cash that you have to go ahead and move forward with it right now? Is it, I mean,
How much do we have in our contingency fund?
Contingency? Well, capital outlays where we're paying it from, that's 4.3 million.
Okay.
I mean, so cash is not an issue. Certainly, as Matt said, wherever the board pleases, I'll just be honest, that doesn't gain you a whole lot if we're talking 6 months down the road, but if that helps you get it in next fiscal year, you're only delaying a few months. So just keep that in mind. Contingency is 1.1 million.
I personally would feel better with doing the 4 and then working towards getting the other 2 when we make sure we don't have any issues with capital outlay over the winter with heating and pipes and everything.
Quick math, how much closer does that get us to our 115 if we wait on the traverses? The 115 well, and then plus your trading values.
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking.
72,000 minus 54,000.
So if we hold off on the 2 traverses, how much closer would we be to that 115 plus the allowance for the trade-in?
Well, the 2 traverses are 40,330 each. So if you don't buy those, that's 80,660. You're not going to get the trade-in value of the 2 traverses.
so let's say close to 20.
Yeah.
So it's a $60,000 difference.
But again, I think too, I mean, how often are you seeing price increases? So you can wait a year and then pay more, and have we saved anything?
Yeah, we'll be in and then we'll be in the 26 model year, so I mean, you might get it, after July or whatever it be. There's a fair chance that the Suburbans don't land before July as well, so that's another variable that could happen.
But once we order those, price will be locked in.
Yes.
Versus if you wait 6 months, then if there's a price increase, could be a price decrease, but most things aren't going down these days. So again, that's true of anything we wait on.
Right.
Just like, capital projects, most things go up. You don't typically save money by delaying purchases. But again, I understand it's a big expense, hence why I did the 3-page summary of the breakdown to kind of help. Because it's a big number, and we all want to be responsible with our money, and that's why I went through that detailed process showing what we've done in the past and how we got to this point. But we certainly could. We'll make anything work, and the rest we'll just have to wait, whatever your comfort is. But just know, because I would want you to think about that, it could be that then in a year, those vehicles cost more, and then was that a good decision? If they go down, it could be. If they go up, we spent more money on old vehicles plus paid more to replace them later on, and the trade value is going to go down. But again, I'm not a car buyer. My crystal ball is not working. I'm just trying to point out both sides of the equation.
Good info to have, thanks. No more discussion? Because we have this as an action item, so I guess we need to either make a change or a vote. And see where we're at.
I'll make a motion to approve the enterprise fleet management lease and maintenance agreement as it is.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve the enterprise fleet management lease and maintenance agreements.
Can I make a different motion?
I think we have to vote on this first, and then we'll see where we're at. All of those in favor of approving the enterprise fleet management lease and maintenance agreements, please raise your hands. Okay. All opposed, please raise your hands. or do we wait until another time?
I make a motion to approve the enterprise fleet management lease program with the Suburbans and the Carnivals.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the fleet management lease with just the 4 vehicles. Are they all minivans?
2 Suburbans and 2
2
minivans.
Suburbans and 2 minivans. Okay, all of those in favor, raise your hand. And all of those opposed, raise your hand. Okay.
Thanks, yeah, I'll be in touch. You were glad to stay, but you don't have to.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay, next up, we need to approve new course adoptions, Spanish 4 and Advanced Art. Tammy.
Yes, so you have 2 proposals for new courses at the high school. Their programs are expanding, and this offers additional courses for those at some upper levels, so they can take them. The Spanish 4, you just approved the textbooks, and those textbooks will carry through that Spanish 4. If we need to have additional ones, it would be the same textbook, so that's there. And then Mrs. Fawcett can do with what she has in the classrooms for Art Studio. So we ask that you approve those so that they can be put into the courses for students next year.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve the new course adoptions for Spanish 4 and Advanced Art?
I motion to approve.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All of those in favor, please raise your hand to approve the new course adoptions, Spanish 4 and Art. Thank you. Okay, and lastly, or almost lastly, approve letters training stipend, and Matt has some information for us on that.
So beginning in July 1st of 2028, any of our elementary staff that teach at the elementary to renew their license has to show that they have knowledge in the science of reading. So to do that, there's a couple different ways. The first, you've heard me and Tammy say that all of our staff has been trained in science reading, utilizing the Reading League, and so that's the information. But to get that, what they're referring to as a sealed literacy, they have to either take a praxis test, which they have the knowledge, but they would take a praxis test with a passing score. The state would pay for that, and then that would be added. If someone does not want to take the praxis test, they could also take another test from Pearson, but there's a testing option. There is a way that they can take letters, and letters is 2 years worth of modules and coursework that they would take for that. Or they could, and they're still working on through Team Sport Regents on a college course that they could take to do this as well. So bottom line is that anybody listed, so our elementary staff that teach English or reading, history, social studies, special education, our school psychologists that are at the elementary level, and our elementary administrators need to have this sealed literacy on them. They did something similar to this way back, 30-some years ago. When I was first getting my license, it was called Exceptional Child. And so that was a special education piece. And so the letters training is very extensive as far as time goes. And so for an example, it's over 2 years, and some of the stuff they have online material that they take. They do some of the reading. If they take the letters in, they would also be able to get college credit. So 3 graduate hours for the first year, 3 graduate credits for the second year. But there's some out of time or out of school time that needs to occur face to face. It's about 24 hours the first year, about 24 hours the second year. So with the time, what I'm proposing, and this would be comparable to what some other districts are doing, is to help the teachers is to pay, once they complete the first year of letters training, when they get a certificate showing that they've completed, they give that to us because we'll need to keep track of that, then we would pay them a stipend of $750. The second year, they would go through that training as well. Once they have the certificate for the second year of training, they would turn that in, they would get a stipend for another $750. So total for the 2 years of training, for the time of just going and attending face-to-face sit down, they would get basically $15 million to help reimburse their time. Now, there's a lot more time involved in that, but that's like some of the online stuff. Well, if they take that for college credit, then we're going to pay for that college credit. And then that's also going to help them move over on the salary schedule. So all of us that have license, we have to, if we don't have a master's, we have to have so many by college, professional development by college credit anyway. And so this could supplant that or be in place of, or they can utilize this. And so it's just, this is a plan to try to help our teachers. Science of reading is good stuff. And so that's what, because the elementary that are in these positions have to require, it's trying to help them. But then at the same time, I don't want to limit it just to the elementary teachers that have to, because it is such good stuff. If we have other teachers, I'll use Heather for an example. She's high school English. She says, hey, this is good. I would like to do this. I need to take some hours anyway. Then she could do it. She could go through it. And so I don't want to limit that if they go through that. So it's a proposal that I would like, that I put together. I think it's fair. And then to be able to present to our teachers as we move forward.
Did KSDE offer ESSER money for letters? Because I was told by
They are paying, so KSDE is paying for letters.
Okay.
Yes, so the cost to take the actual letters course is being paid for. So that there's no cost to us. We do have the option if we wanted to get someone as a trainer for letters, we could go through that. We're still looking at it. There's a lot of, I don't want to say strings attached, but there's a lot of responsibilities that I don't know that makes the most sense for us right now. But we're still looking at that part of it. But this is, to answer your question, yes. But I think that's just for the class, not for like the college credit. So the college credit, then they do the work that they can keep that. So that would be an addition.
Any other questions? All right, do we have a motion to approve the letters training stipend?
A motion to approve letter training statement.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All of those in favor to approve letters training stipend, please raise your hand. Wonderful. Okay.
And just so you're aware, what we will do is Tammy and I, will schedule with our building administrators, and then we'll go out and we'll present this to the teachers and walk them through all of that, because there's still a lot of questions regarding this, because part of it is, like, it says elementary, it'll say elementary is K-6, but you have 6th grade teachers in the middle school, and so, does middle school teachers have to or not? So we have the answer to that, they do not, but we want to explain all that.
How many teachers have actually taken, like how many, because I read go retroactive.
I'll make a retroactive, I want 3 people there.
Like 16, 17, I think,
Yeah,
have
we-
like completed.
Yeah, and some.
And I don't have probably all the people who are actually enrolled in this one, and then another cohort starts in January, so we have additional people. That one is full, so I know that there's additional people that have enrolled in that, so.
Just curious.
Yep, good question.
Super. Okay, next up, approve annual USD368 district audit and bond compliance disclosures, 2023, 2024, Jimmy.
Yeah, so every year, we present the audit to the board, and typically that's done at this meeting for your approval, and then these have to be filed by the end of the calendar year. So out there on board docs, under the public documents, is all the full-blown audit and bond disclosures, so we'll go through both of those tonight. The document out there called the audit review is what I created several years ago in lieu of having the auditor, CPA Harold Mays with Agler Gatter, come and present the whole 63-page audit. This is my summary of the audit, which by the end of my spiel tonight, you might think, was that a summary? But trust me, it is, of the full 63 pages. So that is what I'll be speaking from mainly as far as the audit overview. And then again, the full document is out there, and that's what's filed. So all municipal entities have to have a CPA audit, and it's filed with the state of Kansas. You can go on the Kansas Department of Administration website, and you can see our audit. You can see any city, any county, any school district, library, hospital, facilities, as far as tax funded, that is, rec commissions, et cetera, et cetera. They're all out there on the state of Kansas, so as ours will be. The bond disclosure is because we have outstanding bond issues, and it goes to the bond market. So just like any almost publicly traded disclosure, bond investors look at those financials and then decide whether they're going to invest in a bond or not. Not quite as critical for a public entity like ours as it is when people are looking at non-government entities. So, but anyway, up there on the screen is kind of my summary review. And so the audit, again, goes into a lot more detail and maybe even more complicated. Hopefully this is an easier to understand format. But I showed the 2-year comparison, which is what the audit does, and then you can see the difference in there. So all of our funds are listed with the page number of the audit reference, so you can go and see all the details that are in the audit. So again, I'm not going to go through this line by line. If there's certainly questions, you can point that out. But the ones that I had marked that I wanted to just point out, again, general fund is up at the top. It's barely showing if you scroll, it's a click. So you can see the difference there, general fund. Again, if you go back and look at my budget slides, you can see the projected difference that I always do year over year. Again, the base state aid increase has a lot to do with that, but the general fund was up $763,000 year over year, the 2-year comparison. The LOB was up $258,000. Again, you can compare that to what is in my budget presentation. And then again, I'm only going to point out some of the larger ticket items. So again, capital outlay, if you look at that, page 26, so you can see, again, capital outlay is different than the other funds. We do not, you can carry over a balance, you don't have to spend that down, and it depends, just like we were talking about with vehicles, of when we spend the money, whether it's in the fiscal year or in the next. So the difference in that, the 1.2 million, is that we spent a lot less is when it was actually paid. So again, you see that budget every year that this board approves. So it depends on the timing of when it's actually paid out, because some of those projects have months of lead time for HVAC and things. Incidentally, roofs and things, which you will probably see next month at the board meeting to approve roof work, which is going to be several $100,000, maybe close to $500,000 that was in the capital outlay that you already approved. So you're going to see that come back again as a large ticket item. So again, that's capital outlay. Coronavirus funds is down there on the page 39. Again, you can see that that was a $222,000 increase. There was a lot of the COVID relief funds in there. Those are gone now, so now we're back to just mainly title funds. And so again, that's going to change a lot. Some of that, the COVID ended up a little skewy numbers. Federal money, again, we have to spend it, and then we request reimbursement. So most funds, you're not going to see a negative balance, but in the monthly financials where you see all the cash balances, all the federals are typically negative because we spend, then we request to get the money back. And so at the end of the year, years ago, before the pandemic, we always zeroed that out. But because of how the ESSER money worked, there were negative balances in there, which you can do and you have to do according to the federal government. So that will get back to a little more normal, if you will. And then health insurance is the one on page 43 down below. You can see that had a different difference of $174,000 less, and that is a good thing. That's what we want. We want our health insurance costs to be down. When you get down the bottom, you'll see the history there. Obviously, a lot of you that have been on this board a while know the woes of our history of the health insurance plan and being self-insured and the different things that have happened through the years there. We'll see a recap here in a minute. And then the last thing I'll point out is that very bottom line is this does include the endowment, because the endowment is a component unit. Even though it is a legally separate entity, has its own board that makes all those decisions, not the school board, but it runs through us for accounting. but they have their own tax ID, they have their own IRS 501c3 designation. But again, we handle the audit and the bookkeeping for the endowment, and I serve as an ex officio on that, as does Matt. Then that's the total expenditures. So then down below, if you want to match this up to page 4 and 5 of the audit book, which again I always think is a good thing for you as a board to know where those numbers come from and check that, you have to take off the student funds and the rec commission. Again, the rec commission just flows through us. Again, separate entity, has its own board, makes its own decision. The tax money flows through us. So that is the extent of our involvement. We collect the money from the county, we pay it out to the rec. They make the rest of those decisions. So when you net those out, you get what's called net expenditures. So the total expenditures year over year, that was about an increase of 1.54%. The net increase is 1.19%. I think that's pretty darn good over 2 years to only have an increase, again, of 1.5%. You couldn't do that based on inflation. So again, a lot of that goes into those and the ups and the downs, like capital outlay, as I mentioned, 1.2 million different. Be a different percent had we spent it all prior to July 1. But again, overall, it's a, to me, respectable number. If you look down at the bottom, that is the history of the health insurance fund. That's 16 years of history. I kind of summarize it, try to color code it. Red, obviously self-explanatory. Those were years we had decreases. The health expenses exceeded the health revenues. So all the claims were more than what the district pays in and what the employees pay in. So just last year, you can see we finally reversed that trend for 2 years in a row, which again, if you remember, we went to Blue Cross Blue Shield, fully insured. I've told that history many times. We knew that was not going to be sustainable. We are done with fully insured. We are now back to a self-insured, semi-self-insured model. So again, this is going to be even more critically important as we go forward. So finally, after 16 years, that's a positive number of the overall trend. Had it not been for last year, and last year's audit was still a negative number. So we've just now gotten to the positive in that 16-year window. So again, we've talked a lot about that and what could happen when we go back to self-insured and why we needed that trend to continue. And then these are the summary of the footnotes. They're in the middle of the audit report. So I'll only point out just a few of the highlights. So we pay for accumulated sick leave upon retirement if employees meet the criteria, and that carries a liability of $96,739, and that is up a little bit from the year before. Actually quite a little bit. It was only $45,000. So again, that's a liability that just accrues by letting employees bank up to their 100 days of sick leave. State aid distribution is no longer an issue. The state of Kansas made all the payments on time and not paid any after June 30th and made you recorded in the current fiscal year, which used to be the norm. Now that hasn't been an issue. Section 3 is long-term debt. That's our bonds that are outstanding. Again, back to the budget presentation, we'll pay those off next July. It will be in another fiscal year. Our statutory debt limit, we could issue right now $30.8 million of bonds without getting special approval. Obviously, it still needs voter approval, but you can issue up to 14% of your assessed value. So as of today, we are under that legal debt limit, even though in the past when we did a bond, districts exceed that all the time. There's another step you have to do that wouldn't even apply to us. So we could issue $30.8 million of bonds. As our bonds pay off and as we deal with maintenance of buildings, that is something that you as a board are going to have to address at some point and think about what you want to do and how we're going to take care of the long-term maintenance of our buildings. Number 4, deposits and investments. Again, we have more than the FDIC limit, so it's critical that those are insured. Our treasurer takes care of that. We have 3 different banks that we utilize, so FDIC insurance is $250,000 per bank. The rest is by collateralized securities or pledge agreements with those banks. Even though a lot of our first option money now, we have what's called an IntraFi account where it's really farmed out to a lot of different banks to stay under that FDIC threshold. And then we have our main account there where it all flows in and out of. Long story short of saying that all the deposits were legally secured, which is important. We always want that money secured. Number 5 is capers. Several years ago, the state made all the entities show what their part of the unfunded net pension liability is. And for Paola School District, that's $44.6 million. And that's actually down about $1.8 million from last year. So some of that is probably what the state is paying into Capers and the different things they've done to shore up the Capers funding, and that's reflected in that number. Number 7, again, operating leases. We only lease our district copiers, like even the vehicles we talked about tonight. While it's called a lease, we are paying cash for those, so there's no interest cost on those vehicles. There's no interest cost on the copiers either. We lease those, a little bit of a different story, because copy machines, I think, are best to not be owned, because they're just interesting devices and they need rotated out frequently. So we did just renew that lease. That cost is actually less. We got new equipment and lowered our cost, if you remember when that was done last year. And then the last thing, because I talked more than the 5 minutes I was planning on it, all the findings of the audit over financial reporting and control, and basically tells that they didn't find any weaknesses, no deficiencies, no non-compliance, and that's in the management letter that you received as well. And if there were issues, you would probably see Mr. Harold May standing here to explain this to you rather than me. So that is the summary of the audit. I do need to quickly tell you a few things out of the bond disclosure, just because I don't ever want that to get overlooked, because you're approving both things tonight, the audit and the bond disclosures, which go out to the bond market. So again, it lists the assessed value history in there from Miami and Franklin County. And you can see what the total increase in that is. The total market valuation of the county, so again, we always hear about the assessed value. The market value of the whole county of $1.6 billion, if I have the decimals right there, which I do. And then the mill levies by fund, all of our history, so you can see what our current mill levy is. Again, we dropped a little over 1 mil in the year that this disclosure covers, all the history from the last 2 years. Then again, this year we went down another 1.5 mils, which you'll see in next year's bond disclosure. We probably will do one more bond disclosure, because the bonds are, I'll have to see if we have to do it next year or not, because we're going to pay them off in July, not in June. Then there's an aggregate tax levy in there, which shows you again the city of Paola levies, our school district levy, what Miami County's levy is, and it also shows you Franklin County, because don't ever forget we have a little sliver of Franklin County, so we deal with 2 counties for tax revenue. But total, 2 years ago, if you lived in the city of Paola, your mill levy was 134.8 mils. In 23-24, that was 129.4 mils, or a decrease of 5.3 mils. That's the school district going down a mil, the county went down 3.8 mils, and the city was roughly 0.4 mils. So again, that was about a 4% decrease in the mill levy. Tax collection record is in the bond disclosures as well. Our tax collection rate is 98.8% for Miami County. That's critically important, because if tax delinquency goes up, and you see every year the delinquent percentage that I tell you in the assumptions of the budget, we usually use 4% to be conservative and safe, because if you were ever the wrong way on that, you would collect less tax. You wouldn't be able to fully fund your budget if the tax payment was less than what you budgeted. So again, that's important to watch. The highest was in 2007. It was 99.6%. 98.8 is still good, but you can see kind of a little bit of a trend there. Unlike Franklin County, which again, Franklin County is a very small part of our budget, but that tax collection percent is 92%. If our Miami County hit 92%, our budget would look a lot different. So keep that in mind. 10 largest taxpayers in there. The current indebtedness, again, we have $6.3 million outstanding. That's $1.9 million less than a year ago. And then overlapping and underlying indebtedness, that section of the bond disclosure shows the bond debt of the city of Paola, of Miami County, and Franklin County. And so if you look at that and compare it to the year before bond disclosure, the city of Paola bonded indebtedness is up $3.2 million. The county is down 1.9. Franklin County is down around 400,000, and again, ours is down 1.9 million, and we will pay our bonds off next July. So that's a lot of information, but what questions do you have on the audit or the bond disclosures? If not, it is yours to approve if
If
you
there
wish.
aren't any questions, I guess we need a motion to approve the annual USD 368 district audit and bond compliance disclosures.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the annual USD 368 district audit and bond compliance disclosures. Please raise your hand if you're in favor. Great. Okay. So that's all for that. Next up is executive session.
Okay, Madam President, I move that we go into executive session with Justin and Matt to discuss an employee pursuant to personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interests of the individuals to be discussed, and that we return to open session in this room at 7:40 PM.
Second.
Okay, all of those in favor of going into executive session, please raise your hand. Thank you.
We're actually going to leave this room and go into my office.
You can say.
Yeah, they're leaving this. You don't have to. You're welcome. You don't have to.
close on this.
I make a motion to extend executive for 10 minutes.
Are we back on yet, Kyle? Yeah. Okay.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to extend executive session for 10 more minutes. That would be until 7:51. All those in favor?
Oh, no, I think we said 7:51.
You did.
Okay.
I'll just make sure you're on the way, because I have to go further to knock on you now.
So this one.
Okay, Madam President, I move we go into executive session with Matt to discuss superintendent goals pursuant to personnel, the same thing, yes?
Yep.
Pursuant to personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interests of the individuals to be discussed, and that we return to open session in this room at
$8.15.
8:15?
All of those in favor? We're going.
You need a
second.
You need a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. A motion and a second to go back into executive session. All of those in favor? Okay, here we go.
Oh, sometimes I'll wake up early.
Yeah.
Clearly.
I've had them call me before earlier, like they're waiting on me to go home. Just stared at it, I'm like, I'm just gonna, my mom, I'm sure it's ready.
Earlier today.
We just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Wonderful. Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Just need 7.
That's the, yes, good, Washington.
Still.
If you want to know anything about the activities association, they just make sense
Just,
to,
if you just do it like that, then you don't even have to
So,
choose. I mean,
it's
to
the
be quite
exact
honest.
same thing that Darren, Amy, I,